I'm happy to, open it up. Has anyone got a question that maybe has come up?
Yes. Can you explain what gaslighting is? It's not something I've heard.
Yeah, sure. So it's a psychological form of manipulation that a person often uses to make the victim of that gaslighting feel that they are responsible for what is being done to them. Often in relationships where there's domestic violence, an example might be, as Anne shared, where they will say, why have you done this? Why are you always making me so angry? Why do you always have to set me off? Why can't you, this and that? And you think, oh my gosh, I'm responsible for their abuse and their behaviour. Mm-hmm. And would you like to share a bit about what some examples are of gaslighting that you experienced? Maybe, you don't have to. Yeah. It's just, it's basically, they just make you feel that you're responsible for their actions. So
they make you feel like you're going crazy.
And they make you feel like you're going crazy. Anne said, like it never happened. Just very quickly, so an example, what happened to me was after I was assaulted, this person said, oh, that never happened.
And
my husband
also
said that.
Encapsulates that, as Ange put it, everybody else thinking they're such a nice person, so that makes you second guess yourself.
And that's why I didn't, I went out for breakfast with him after that happened, because he was saying to me, oh, let me take you out for a nice breakfast. Oh, that didn't happen how you remembered. That didn't happen. So to me, I was going, oh my gosh, am I going crazy? Did I make this up in my head? And that they literally, make you feel that way. So
even be in the apology.
I could add to that.
I might just ask. Is there any other questions that anyone's got for me, Andrew, Jace?
I kind of know the answer to this, but I think it's worth Ange sharing.
You might just have to speak
Sorry,
up a little
I kind of
bit.
know the answer to this because I know Ange so well, but I think it's worth asking for everyone else's benefit. I know that you had a church background, as did your ex, and that you were in that situation. What role do you think the church at the time played versus what they could have played, and perhaps what maybe they're now playing in your domestic violence story?
Yes, I was in church for a long time, my husband and the kids. And the thing that I found the hardest was the particular church that I was in. They didn't want to look at any issues like that. It was as if it was too messy, and it was a respectable, middle class, civilised church, and those issues they just didn't actually want to acknowledge. So that's very isolating, and that's really hard when you know that things are going on at home. And what else?
What do you think's helped now?
I think now churches are becoming more aware of just how devastating and how destructive domestic violence and family violence is. I think they're definitely more willing to open their eyes and be supportive. So I think that's it's never too late for any organisations really, or churches, to be willing to address those problems. And I think that churches are doing that now. They're starting to hear people, they're starting to hear men and women and the children. So I think it is making progress. Is there anything else?
No. I just wanted to add to that quickly too, and that was why I was so grateful when Rose, offered to sponsor this event, because as you'll find when you read the book, there are a couple of stories of women whose abuse has been silenced by their churches, and these are still issues that I've found even with talking to various people that there are unfortunately still churches who don't want to acknowledge the pain that other churches, not necessarily even theirs, but others have caused, because they, for some reason, they feel if they acknowledge that, then it's like it's putting Christianity as a whole into disrepute. And so I was really, really glad that to hear of, you know, churches like Rose's church, where, you know, Ange goes, being willing to have these difficult conversations, because, you know, they are hard to have for some people still. And it's really heartening to me to know that there are churches that are just willing to have these discussions. And I think Rose and I had a pretty frank conversation recently about it. And she said, or I think it was Rose and also another church I spoke to recently, they said, we can't just be having these discussions once a year. We need, as churches, we need to be having discussions around domestic violence and mental illness and things like that regularly throughout the year. We need to be creating community hubs and events where people can, you know, seek support in both, you know, from professionals as well as from their church family, because we need to talk about these things. And so I think I know it's difficult for some people to hear about the role that churches have played in people's abuse, but just like any other section of society, we know that abuse happens everywhere. Abuse doesn't discriminate. So we need to talk about it. And I'm just glad to see churches, when I do see churches that are willing to have these discussions. And I think that's a big power of the book, as well as, reaching out with these messages. So. Yes.
There is something I'd like to, if I may, very briefly. My name's Debbie, and I'm taking time. But talking of churches, I was at one of the charismatic churches now late when I was 10, and I've actually written this in my memoir, although the memoirs, I'll get back to that when I've written articles. But I was, chucked out of Sunday school. And as far as I am aware, all I did was get up, knock over a box of crayons, and anyway, next thing I knew, my mother said, you come to church with me for 4 weeks, because the Sunday school teachers would take it in turns with their classes. It'd be 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off. And I said, and I said, why? And she said, Mrs. Bleasy can't handle you. And I still to this day don't know what I really did wrong, except know that I'm made to be feel different because I was blind. So just I'll share that. Thank you.
Thank you for being brave enough to share that, and I'm sorry that you were treated in that way.
It's done now.
But in my work, I do, because I work as a memoir writing coach, I hear from a lot of people who've suffered or experienced many different traumas, and unfortunately, I do hear of many people who've been hurt in different ways by churches, and it's a difficult. It's difficult for me because personally, I have faith and I'm a Christian, and I'm very private about my faith, but when I do sort of speak about some of these issues, particularly in the book, sometimes I, have Christians or churches that sort of not so willing to help me talk about these things because it might make them look bad. And as a Christian, that's, it makes me a little bit sad, but I do know that things are changing, and I think it's important for us to have our experiences validated. And another thing that I want to add too is that I've worked with a lot of people who've experienced very deep hurts by churches, and there's a man who's in the book from the Gold Coast, and he shares about how he is not at the moment comfortable with going back to his church, but he's found that he can still have his personal relationship with God. And there's a lot of different people in the book. Some people have faith, some people don't, but I think it's just good for people to know that whatever they need to do as part of their healing is important, and if they want to keep their faith and explore it for themselves outside the church, then that's fine, because I know that some people feel guilty, like, maybe this means I'm not a good Christian if I'm not going back to church anymore. So I just hold the the narrative sort of that we do what we need to do to work through our trauma, and stuff anyone else who's going to judge you for what you need to do. So yeah, I'd just like to encourage you that if you are struggling with something today on your journey to wellness, that you just keep moving forward and trying different things. There's definitely no shame in seeking professional help. I think that's very important for people to know, and that's something that I speak about in churches as well, is that because I know a lot of people who are Christians, and they'll sometimes feel that if they have a mental illness or they have depression, then it means there's something wrong with them because they're a bad Christian or they're not doing something well enough. And I say, well, that's bullshit. There's a t-shirt I saw recently that I think says it really well, and that's it's okay to talk to Jesus and your therapist. So yeah, if there is anyone here who's Christian and is struggling with someone, I just want you to know that it is okay to go and seek professional help, and we all need someone who is a supportive person in our lives. And sometimes the people that we want to turn to, like our friends or our family, may not always be the best person to speak to. So it's good to have an outside objective opinion as well. So we will in a moment start moving to book signings. But I'm happy to take one last question if anyone has a question. Kathy?
Okay, for Jason, I think I've probably heard the answer to this before, but I'm interested in your opinion. Is there a way or something that a person can say to a man who's in denial about being depressed or their own problems? I know there's no major thing, but I'm just curious to know, would it have helped if someone said, look, I can see there's something wrong, this isn't an okay way to be, would that have helped you?
Yeah, and it does, and I teach mental health first aid. I'm an instructor now, and that is one thing that is a definite. If it comes from close friends and family, people are more likely to listen. And for me, I would have just brushed it off and said, you don't know what you're talking about, but going away, you still take that in. Another way is to leave, if they're not willing to talk or they feel ashamed about it or
In denial.
yeah, or in denial. When you're in denial though, there's still the thoughts of it. So if you leave things laying around, brochures and so forth, people will have a sneaky look when you're not watching, and that could if you have some evidence-based, or if you read, say, bipolar is this, and then you give them some of the traits for bipolar, if you think that that's what it was, they might go, oh, hang on, yes, it is. So, yeah, leaving things around and having those discussions is definite, because it's proven that family and friends giving that advice is a way that they'll go and seek help. Yeah, definitely.
Can we give Jason and Angela another clap, please?